Sustainability Live. Today we have a special guest and someone who I really admire, my big sister, Ruth Jarman.
Hello.
I have to give a shout out to Kama and Blowy. I've been following their BROventures, their brother ventures on YouTube, and they've been live streaming from Japan and Australia, doing adventures at the same time. So I thought that was really cool, and I thought, hey, I've got someone in Japan that I could talk to about sustainability stuff. So it's great that you can join me. Thanks, Ruth.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's start with a photo of our family. Can you believe that? From when we were little, Ruth was always blonde and I was always super brown hair. And what do they call us? Snow White and Rose Red. Do you remember that?
Kind of.
And now I'm more white than you. You've got more beautiful. I like your brown color at the moment. It's looking really
Well,
nice.
I'm trying to go red. I'm
Yeah?
trying to channel my inner redhead because I feel like red is a strong color, and we all need to be strong at this difficult time.
Yeah. I feel that. Go in red for power. I like it. I'm
Yeah.
trying to grow out my gray, trying to embrace it.
Yeah.
This is a picture of you from your profile. You're looking fantastic. Maybe before one of your NHK broadcasting. So you've been on some NHK shows. Are you doing anything currently?
Wait a minute. I can't see the image. Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, that was when was that? Yes, I think it was before. I'm doing right now an NHK show for NHK World.
Okay.
So it's an international broadcast. It's called Easy Japanese for Work.
Okay.
We found is after we did this one called the Shigoto no Kisoego for 5 years, that was for Japanese people who are trying to learn English. We realized there's a whole bunch of people around the world who are trying to learn Japanese because they want to come work here.
Right.
Because, there's lots of jobs in Japan.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of workforce issues with not enough people to work.
Definitely.
So it's a very wonderful country to live in. It's safe. It's great. So a lot of these young, college students, people around the world are really studying Japanese. So we did the opposite version. So instead of English, Shigoto no Kisoego, so basic English for work, we did easy Japanese for work.
Wonderful.
So that's really on NHK World.
Uh-huh.
And it doesn't show in Japan, but it shows outside of Japan.
Okay.
So I often get little messages from friends around the world. They're like, I just saw you on TV, People seem to like NHK World. People really like that channel. I didn't know that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I was on NHK World years ago when I did some disaster volunteering, and there was a live feed, and people were commenting to me from Canada and all over the world. Yeah, it's
People watch
amazing.
it everywhere.
So
Yeah.
unfortunately, you can't see it in Japan, but it is available abroad.
You can see it on NHK On Demand. There's an application called NHK On Demand, and you can download it, and you can watch it that way.
Okay.
So there are a lot of people in Japan that watch NHK World, and it's on that. So basically, this photo was from that show.
Awesome. Yeah, I find like when I listen to your Japanese, as someone who's studied Japanese for a long time, it's much easier for me to understand you than a native Japanese person. So I could understand how you would really be able to help people because you've gone through it yourself. You're still studying every day. That's one of the things I admire about you. Whenever I come and stay at your house, I can't believe it. At your level that you're still studying is really impressive.
I mean, I'm still studying English.
Oh, me too, all the time.
I mean, there's always more to learn.
Yeah.
And I feel like the same way that if you're an English teacher in Japan, when you speak English, you just get used to speaking a little bit slower and a little bit clearer. So your English is very easy to understand for other people overseas as well.
Yeah.
So in the same way, if I'm trying to get an idea through in my second language, it's obviously going to get slower and clearer. and I have to be a little bit more direct. I can't speak in such high context. So yeah, I would agree. If you're speaking to someone who's speaking Japanese as a second language, probably the Japanese is easier to understand than a total fluent person who's a native speaker who's not really used to speaking to non-native speakers, you know?
I mean, you're often speaking in Japanese, not only on TV, but at events. I think the next photo here is from one of the events I went to where you were one of the main speakers giving advice and stuff. That is connected to teleworking, I think, because you have to present your best self when you're online in meetings and stuff. Do you have any advice for people not used to like being in the spotlight speaking? You're so good at it.
Well, I totally agree with you. I think that when you were talking about those bros earlier, Australia and Japan, there's so many things that have been made possible by this shift to telework that's kind of been forced, right?
Yeah.
And there's going to be a whole new methodology of how to, communicate well with people through technology. So there's one methodology of speaking with people in person where you look at their, you have a expression of welcome to them, and you make sure that they feel that you are like, something that I always recommend is a lot of times when you're in a group and you're at these exchanging card, meetings that people do. If you notice the other person is constantly, their eyes are switching around to who else is in the room, you don't feel like they're focused on you. So one thing I definitely try to do in a person-to-person thing is always keep my eyes on the person and not let the other things around me distract me. Right. And I think in a digital world as well, one of the most difficult things with web communication is that you're supposed to keep your eyes on the camera.
Yeah.
You don't look at the person in the screen, right?
I'm struggling with that right now. You're doing really good. I think I'm looking at you on the screen, but it doesn't look like I'm looking at you because I'm not looking at the camera. That's exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yes. So there's all these new methods of great communication that we're going to have to learn about working digitally, because one of the things that I talk about in my video is the one thing that you cannot sacrifice when you work from home or you do teleworking or anything like that is the quality of your work.
Yeah.
That's the one thing you cannot sacrifice. This is not like working from home and, binding a book, which is also a difficult thing. And I respect people who do that, but it's not just something that people used to think of something you could do at home, like, computer data input or something is something people would do from home. Now people are going to have to be thinking of ideas, presenting ideas, doing proposals. All the stuff that you did at work is now being shifted to home. So you cannot sacrifice that quality. And in order not to appear as if you're sacrificing the quality, you need to be able to communicate perfectly through the digital world, right? And that's like a whole new group of challenges, but it's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And in so many ways, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about teleworking is because it makes work experiences, especially for women, more flexible. And so a lot of women, especially in Japan, are the main caregivers, not only to children, but to elderly parents and stuff. So to have that flexibility, to have your workday at home, but be able to take care of your family, have that kind of flexibility, that's kind of new in Japan and an exciting way to kind of level the playing field in Japan, don't you think?
I definitely think it's there. But I still think that there is a lot of change that has to be made. And one of the big changes that I would request that everybody does that starts with the woman is I would really like all of us women to lower our expectations for ourselves, because I think one of the things that keeps women back from being successful in a teleworking kind of situation is somehow we feel pressure to do everything perfectly. Everything.
Right. Yeah.
Housekeeping, raising your kids. You got to have your those white uabaki shoes perfect before they, go to school. I mean, like every single aspect has to be done perfectly. And unfortunately, in my case, I was in an international marriage, which didn't go well. And I think one of the reasons why it didn't go well is because of the expectations. So neither of us understood the kind of unspoken expectations we were putting on each other. And the Japanese, non-Japanese rift there was very large. So I feel that for women in Japan, number one thing that we need to do is really be wagamama and selfish about deciding what your priorities are.
Yeah.
And in one of my videos, I talk about the thing that you sacrifice. Are you ready, everyone? Because this is what I've been sacrificing for so many years. I've finally been able to not sacrifice it, but for so many years, the sacrifice I made, don't laugh too hard, is the housekeeping aspect.
I'm on board with that. Yeah, I let it go. You have to.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of women in Japan on ourselves, everybody puts pressure on themselves. They have to have a perfect house, perfect kids, perfectly happy husband, perfectly all with the PTA at school and all that. And on top of that, perfect job. Now, if your job was like, I don't know, something you could do and then put down and then go back to and do again and put down, it works. And that in Japan is called naishoku. Naishoku is like where you had like a calendar like this and you just had to like look through each page. It's something based on rote and, repetition and stuff. That kind of stuff, yeah, you could do that because you can put it aside. But the kind of telework that's going to be expected in going forward is exactly what Joy and I have done, which is total quality work from home. So I'm sorry to say I'm not usually a negative person at all, but you cannot do everything 100%. It's impossible.
No, yeah.
So in your mind and in your heart, you give yourself a break and you say, well, I guess the house is going to be clean after they go to college because that's what I decided. And I mean, it's like...
Well, one quick tip, which I've noticed, which you just commented on, is the blurred background. This is a tip. If you're kind of worried about how your background looks while you're doing a Zoom call, you don't have time to tidy up. Or like me, you have a kid who has a desk behind you and you're just tired of nagging them to clean it up. You just blur the background, or you get like this simple kind of screen or curtain and put it behind you. So even in less ideal, like you've got a beautiful home office, you're working from there, but in less ideal situations, you can blur it, or even you can change your background. A lot of the features will let you put, like you can put a landscape or the beach in Hawaii or something.
Nice. I mean, I think that's a transitionary good idea for people that are worried about that. But I actually would take it even further and say having kids in the background studying, or having a kid running around outside, or hearing a baby cry or something should be totally normal in our new life.
Yeah.
Should be totally accepted. I don't like to even use the word should, but I hope that when we're on calls, if you don't mind me moving into my YouTube channel.
No, let's go.
Because this is the reason I started it.
Right.
And my YouTube channel had been there sort of like, what's it called when a volcano is not erupting?
Dormant.
My YouTube channel was dormant for a very long time. Although I did get a lot of views on one message I gave like a long time ago, just Happy New Year kind of thing. So I knew it was there and I was thinking about it. But as we started into this period of working from home, I called one of my clients, and I think I had to call her mobile because she wasn't working at the office, and she didn't answer. And then she wrote me back a mail saying I couldn't answer because my 2-year-old was making noise in the background, and I felt bad for that. And then I remembered in 1997 or so, before I joined Space Design, I used to do interpreting for this Japanese CEO, and we would go to like Italy and places like that, and I would interpret. And I mean, I won't say anything bad about him, but he was a very difficult person to work with, which is slightly, but not too bad. And one of the things he told me is that on my answering machine, you know, back in the old days, we had those answering machines, right? On my answering machine, my son was 2 years old, and I had been holding him when I was answering when I was making my recording of my message. And when I would jiggle my son, he would laugh so hard, and it was the most endearing, most wonderful laugh. And so I did a really fun recording saying, "This is Ruth," and that was when I was doing my home translation job. "This is Ruth, can't answer the phone right now," you know, in Japanese. And then my son was laughing in the background in nice timing. You know, it wasn't like he was interrupting. It was like I would say something, jiggle, laugh, and then say something else, jiggle, laugh. And I was just overjoyed with how it came out. But my CEO that I was translating for, when we went on the trip to New York, he reprimanded me. And he said, "Having your son laughing on the recording is so unprofessional.
Oh.
You need to erase that right now," he said. And at the time, I felt like, okay, I guess so. So I did erase it. But I regret that. I wanted to stand up for myself and say, no, that's my life. My life is my son. I work for my son. I'm not working for you. The reason I work is to give my son a better future. Yeah. So he's my priority, not this, right? So when I called, what was it, like 2 weeks ago, and this lady that I work with had the same sort of reaction, I felt like, wait, no. That's what we have to change. That's what we as women can change. We can say, no, this is our life. This is our real life. I've got my brain. It's super sharp. But I also have my 2 little kids running around in the back. Yeah. You know, perfectly fine. And that's, I just really wanted to get the message out about encouraging people to think about this. Yeah. In a very analytical way. Yeah. Like really think about it. Not accept the norms as is, but really think about how we are going to shape this new style of working.
Yeah. Did you ever see that amazing, well, it's been on YouTube and retweeted so many times, the BBC reporter, I think he's in Korea, and he's doing a serious BBC report, and suddenly his 2-year-old comes charging in, and then the little one in the like, you know, those little things that you can walk before you can walk? Yeah. Comes in, and she's like dancing behind, and he's like horrified. The wife is coming in and takes him out and horrified, but everybody loved to see that. And I think we have to, like you say, you have to embrace your real life as part of your job, especially working from home. And we have to accept that and support that in other people and be like, oh, is that your cat that just came in frame? Or is that your wife? Or, you know.
When people feel pressure, they can't be creative. And this is the time in the history of the world, not the whole world, but I mean, recent history, where we all have to be creative. Yeah. I was talking about it yesterday, and I really think, this is my opinion on this whole situation. So when the countries start to come back, and when the economy starts to come back, this is different from the financial crisis. Fundamentally different, because after the financial crisis, you had to find the money. Yeah. You had to find it because it went away. That's why it was a financial crisis. This one that we're experiencing, this is a health crisis. The restaurants are still there. The people who want to eat at the restaurants are still there. Now it's a matter of creativity to figure out how to creatively figure out how to keep people safe and also how to keep your business going. Definitely. So this is when everybody's brain, you know, the infrastructure of the economy is there. This is not an economic crisis. There's a lot of people without jobs, but the capacity is there, right? So for all of us to creatively figure out, how do you bring people back in a safe way, you know, that's where it's going to require all of our brains. So This is a true challenge to encourage people to be creative, but they have to be creative at home. Yep. So how do you allow a much more creative environment so someone feels like they don't worry that their kid's going to come into the room and start to end the conversation quickly. Right. Right? You don't want that.
Yeah. In fact, you know, I mean, I've read a few blogs, people saying they have more respect for their coworkers now, that they can see inside their life a little bit. That see that they've got kids. Oh, I didn't know you had kids. And it humanizes people. You don't see that background story when you're just working in an office, right? And in terms of gender pay gap, apparently online work has only a 3% pay gap, men and women. And of course, in regular companies is about 20% is the pay gap, if not higher. So if this is going to continue for the next 2 years, more online work, this is, another gender equalizer. Or if you have disabilities, it also equalizes. Any work from home situation is more forgiving for the non-typical standard worker that the company wants. And it's more about the product that you produce instead of the physical being in the spot at work for a certain time, right? It's more production value instead of physical value, if that makes sense. I'm sure there's a better way to describe that.
Well, this is going to require a lot of creativity on the part of upper management, and it's going to require a lot of courage, because when you're talking about the 3%, that is work that traditionally was thought could be done from home, right? Like translation or something like that. Whereas what we're going to go from now is the 20% pay gap is due to work that's considered it can only be done in the company, company environment. You have to have face-to-face meetings, or you have to go visit the client. Like all the stuff that traditionally managers thought could only be done in the office environment is now being switched outside, right? So that, first of all, the managers have to be very brave and think, okay, yes, I'm worried a little bit about security. Yes, this is very different from what we've done so far, but I'm going to bite the bullet and I'm going to try and see if I can give this job, this creative job that usually would require a lot more checking on site. I'm going to give it to somebody who's working from home, and I'm going to trust them. That is a huge step that we're going to have to see if it happens going forward. I really hope it does.
I think with your experience, you started with some big companies. You understand how big companies work. Let's talk a little bit about your website. Here's the picture from your message from the CEO on Jarman International. You want to talk a little bit about what you do with Jarman and how you can help companies kind of navigate understanding Japanese companies, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's a really good example of what we do is on this screen on the right-hand side, you can see the little video that we have. Mm-hmm. I hope everybody will watch that. We're trying in very creative ways to connect the international client with the wonderful content that exists in Japan. So to be that connector. And the connections can happen through social media, can happen through networking, can happen through different publications that exist in Japan for internationals to read. So we consult on those things. And that's basically what Jarman does. But the thing that I wanted to add that I see as a huge business opportunity for everybody watching this is that the other day, this is another reason why I started those messages on YouTube, because it's not just for women, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Because I serve as an outside director of this very big, institutionalized, huge Japanese old company, okay? And I am the only woman on the board, okay? Everybody else is what you would imagine would be a typical board in Japan. Wonderful guys, so smart, but they're all career employees of this company. So they've been there forever since they graduated from college, okay? So the other day, because of this crisis, they decided we're going to have the board meeting online, all right? And I got a message from the person at who's coordinating this. We just wanted to check in advance that you have a PC at home that you could use to connect besides the iPad that we've already distributed to you. So you use the iPad to look at the documents for the day, and then you use your PC for the actual meeting, right? One other person in the 4-person mail, this was only to 4 people. One other person wrote back and said, I do not have my own PC at home. So suddenly the company had to send out little iPhones to everybody, had to buy everybody an iPhone and send it out. That was the first example. Second example, quickly, sorry,
That's okay.
is that we had another meeting online with like 10 of us. And this was a different company, but a very famous, good, what you would expect as like super on the front lines company. And we had a video meeting with 10 of us. And 3 of the people in the meeting, there was so much howling going on with their Wi-Fi. And then it would drop off and come back on and drop off and come back on. And you know what I realized? I realized that probably 80% of the Japanese office workers, okay? Office workers, mostly probably men, but, any office worker, somebody who works in an office, probably works in the office all day long until late at night. They go to their nomikai, and they drink with somebody else, and like I used to do when I was at real estate. And then you go home and you sleep. And then you wake up and you go back to the office. And then on the weekends, that's when you take your kids out or you do something. So people in Japan were not using PCs at home. Do you get what I'm saying? Like in the US, it was sort of like if you didn't finish your work by 6, then you do a little bit at night after dinner.
Yep.
I realize probably in most cases that is not happening here.
Yeah.
So sudden change is opening up so many opportunities for trying to help these companies through this huge change, because change always offers big business opportunities, right?
Definitely. And we know that all of the PC sales went up like crazy once teleworking started happening in Japan, right? Mm-hmm. And people like struggling to get all the gear that they needed. But I was working for a very typical traditional company for a long time, and it was kind of frowned upon to work from home because, like you said, the security, people were really worried about top secret documents leaking somehow. But I was a teacher. I mean, really? Like what? What, preparing for classes, that's not like top secret stuff. But I think any typical company in Japan maybe is really concerned about security, or really just wants their staff there physically in their offices for whatever reason. Like they just, I
don't think it's a conscious decision. It's just that, all of us living in Japan know that big change in Japan is actually seen with a lot of suspicion, right? Because it changes something. Yeah. You really have to think it through. Most of the decisions made here are made on consensus base. So you can see the whole way that Japan handled and is trying to handle the COVID-19 issue. There's so much that's different from other countries. Yeah. I like how each country is doing it their own way. It's such a good, study in different cultures.
For sure.
But the Japanese style is like total consensus based. They're doing their nemawashi on TV. So every time I watch a new news program on NHK, I'm like, whoa, they started the nemawashi for the testing now.
Wait. Can you explain nemawashi? What do you mean?
Okay, so, oh wow, we're gonna have to talk for like 3 hours.
Okay, wait. Okay. Can I just say we got one comment? Chris Gillich says, "Will be interesting to see if more workers move to freelance in future, as working from home is becoming the norm."
Yeah, true. Yes.
Thanks for commenting, Chris. Definitely.
One thing to add to Chris's comment is that more and more Japanese companies are starting to recognize second jobs. Up until now, you had to only work for that one company. And in your contract, you could not do outside work. But what I found out, during this COVID-19 thing, is that more companies, since they can't pay what they've paid up until now when somebody's at home, they're recognizing that go ahead, take another job, if that helps your income.
Right.
So that will also, like Chris is saying, fundamentally change. People can do freelance and they can keep their regular job.
Yep. Yeah. Which that just changed, the law just changed recently, right? It used to be illegal if you were working for one company to get a side job if you had full-time contract. There was something in the newspaper a couple months ago about that.
Yeah.
Let's go to your books because you've written so many amazing books in Japanese, which have really helped a lot of people. Here's your Amazon page, Ruth Jarman, and then Shiraishi as well, because you were writing books when you were Shiraishi.
Yeah, Giri, just very like at the very borderline. I wish I had not done that because, there was such a funny joke that one of my friends made. Oh my gosh. We were having a party before COVID. It was just the five of us. And I go out for dinner with like a really high up guy in JR and like different places like that. And we do a regular dinner. And I was like, man, I really regret that I put Shiraishi, but both of my children have Shiraishi as their name. So I feel like I don't want to 100% separate from that. And that's part of my identity. I was Shiraishi for 20 years, right?
That was your career name for a long time, right?
Yeah. So they said in Japan, you know how you have kanji, right? The Chinese characters?
Yeah.
You can do any yomikata you want for that Chinese. So like sometimes you'll see a name that looks like Yuriko, but it's like totally different. Like it's read Janet or something like that. Like you can put any kind of yomikata, it's called. Any way that you want to pronounce this Chinese is really free in Japan. So that's why a lot of Japanese kids, where you look at their kanji and you're like, oh, it's going to be this. The yomikata is completely different, right? So they were like, why don't you just keep Shiraishi and say the yomikata is Jarman? I thought that was so good.
That's so clever.
Like Shiraishi, so they're like, you say Shiraishi to kaite Jarman to yomimasu midaina. So it says Shiraishi, but it's read as Jarman, and that would like totally freak everybody out, and it would be very memorable. And I thought that was such a good idea. Yeah, so I have one book that still has Shiraishi. We changed it, but once you register on Amazon, it's there forever. Right. But it's okay. I don't mind.
No, you got all your names covered. I worked with women who had gotten divorced and tried to go back to their original name. And as a Japanese woman, it's actually really hard to change your name back to your family name or something. Or she wanted to keep both names because she had written books. And I mean, it's a big issue.
But it's also like an emotional thing because you are trying to separate yourself in your brain for so long. But then after you get through, so it's 2012 for me, so it's been like 8 years. So once you get to where you're back to your normal self and you're feeling confident about yourself, then you're sort of like, oh, maybe I'll use it, So there's this kind of like phase that you have to go through, I think.
Right. Do you want to introduce your books a little bit? What kind of topics you were covering?
Yeah, so the first 3 books were basically Japanese people have confidence in yourself. So I had started writing this article for a magazine in Japan, and the guy who made that magazine was a former boss of mine from Recruit, which is the company I used to work at. And he said, it was right after the financial crisis, and he called me and he said, Ruthie, Japanese people are losing their confidence. Is there any way that you could write a regular article to encourage Japanese people? Like, is there anything good that you can find in Japan? And I'm like, oh gosh. I'm like, Higashi-san.
So many things.
I'm like, Higashi-san, give me all the paper in the world. And I write everything that I love about Japan. And he's like, oh, okay, could you write it? So I started writing this 1,000 kanji, article every month. And it got good reviews. And then we got to like 25 articles, so it was 25 months. And then as a goodbye gift, when I left Space Design, which was that real estate company I worked at, he gave me a little magazine that had all the articles that I had written. And it was like, Lucy no Nantuka, and had my photo on the front, And he gave me 1,000 of them.
Aww.
And I'm like, what am I going to do with 1,000 little books? And I thought, whoa, it's the end of the year. Why don't I send them all as nengajos at the end of the year greeting to everybody? Because they can encourage, because I'm embarrassed about myself and like, I don't want to promote myself, but I want to tell everybody all this message inside, have confidence, right? So I sent out all those books to everybody. and a publisher read it. And that's when they got the idea for the first book.
Wow, awesome. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great thing about like what you're doing and being so positive and everything is there are often knock-on effects later down the road leads to something else, right? Leads to something
Right.
positive.
Yes.
That's awesome. And
So
you wanted to give examples from one of your books on Nadeshiko, the strength of Yamato Nadeshiko, which is like a perfect woman in Japan, the ideal woman. Is that right? How would you explain?
I wish I had a copy right here. I can't remember what my English title was. Do you see it?
Yamato Nadeshiko.
On the cover. It should have it in English, like how I translated it.
I don't.
Anyway, it's basically like
samurai ladies to forge Japan's future.
There you go. So that was the third book, and that was also a series of articles. And if you go inside this book, I kind of wrote this book for women and kids that they could read it together.
Okay.
And it's all about what I think is wonderful about Japanese women. And there's even a page inside where you can do coloring with your kid. So like how to embrace your womanness as a mom, as a woman, and also succeed, in business. So it was kind of like, you are the future of Japan, so have confidence was the main message. And then I think I sent two little examples of so part of the book is done in anime because the articles in the magazines were all cartoons. So, 40 or 50%, maybe 60% of the book is written that I wrote about women. And then 30% of the book is this cartoons about my experience here and, what you can learn from it. And this kind of expresses well, like the meaning of the whole book is sort of saying, these are great things about Japan, but these are things that also pose challenges. And it's different from other places. So once you understand that there's a difference, you can start to think about how you're going to work with that, right?
Right.
Just pointing out the difference and saying that's bad because of that is not the way that it should be. Well, it can be done. That's not the path to success.
Yeah.
The path to success is realizing, first of all, the difference exists. So I use the example of 24, which is Jack Bauer. I'm going to call it CTU, right? So Jack Bauer, in a lot of cultures, especially in like America where I'm from, and we're both from, is where it's really, really respected if you can do it yourself. You do it yourself and you did everything yourself and you did a really good job and you are seen as kind of like the lone, cowboy guy who gets the job done, and it's very much respected. And so that poses interesting challenges for telework as well, right? But in Japan, the whole focus is on consensus.
Right.
So you're always supposed to be asking everybody else what to do going forward. That also poses very big challenges for telework, because how do you maintain that culture of consensus building in a digital age? And then for the Americans, it would be, how do you maintain that like Lone Ranger, I'm going to do it myself, where that's also successful in a lot of ways. But how are you able to maintain that kind of culture in this new digital age, right? So, yeah, that's basically the thrust of the book.
Yeah. I mean, one of the benefits of the group consensus, definitely, that I've come to appreciate in Japan is the shared blame aspect. The share the positive result, share the blame. So if there's a positive result, in theory, everybody in the group should be like, yay, we did it, right? Which is awesome. If there's a problem, everybody should share the blame, which is awesome because the one person's not singled out. But in actuality, it often is still one person, or, somebody takes the blame and somebody takes the credit. But in theory, the group consensus is a very good idea.
Well, it's very good at keeping everything vague. And in Japan, keeping everything vague is really important. So getting back to the point about the COVID-19 handling and the nemawashi. So nemawashi, ne is the root of a tree. Let's say a big tree that you have in your backyard. It's a root. and mawasu is to rotate it. So in order to get the root out of the ground, you have to water and you have to shake and rotate and whatever to get it out. So nemawashi in Japan is basically saying that some thinking process that's very rooted, deeply rooted in the culture, requires shaking and moving around and adding water to pull it out. So when they say, that's nemawashi, they're saying that somebody has started to try and rotate this root, okay? So when I watch NHK every day, I can immediately, I've been here 32 years already, so I can immediately pick out, they're starting the nemawashi to do the lockdown. Because you see this process, a very clear process. You got a sensei who comes on and says, we have to worry about this overshoot thing, right? And then you got Koike Chiji, the governor of Tokyo. She comes and she talks about overshoot. And then you have Abe-san finally coming out talking about possibility of overshoot. And we have to be, and then you have all these news channels having discussions about overshuto, right? And how dangerous that is, all showing this certain graph, right? And so slowly you realize they're getting the message. Oh, and then you get the top guy from the business, which is Keidanden, coming out talking about overshuto. And then you realize, okay, so the whole country, all the leadership is starting the nemawashi to have people feel comfortable. People are not going to like it, but have people understand, this is a whole country thing. This is what we have to participate in. So once this starts, everybody has to cooperate and we all have to stay home. And then when that starts, now when they point out, but this pachinko parlor in this place is not doing it, or these young people, surfers in this place are not doing it, the whole entire country is like, that pachinko parlor is really bad. So it's like, if you're not a part of the consensus now, you're doing meiwaku, which is like major bad, causing trouble to other people, correct?
Yeah.
So the way that they've done it in Japan is so interestingly Japanese, and we won't really know, basically to handle the next pandemic that comes along in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, all these things that these different countries are doing is going to be food for thought for handling the next one, I think.
Definitely.
And so I'm wondering if this Japan model, in certain respects, might be helpful to others. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But and the nemawashi right now, my prediction since we're live, is that it started for the testing. So now in about a week or 2 weeks, we're going to see much more expanded testing.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that is really important about understanding Japan likes to roll out things over the whole country all at once.
Right.
Because they value equality. So they do not like doing like a testing in, let's say, Georgia, the state of Georgia, or, like letting the governors do something totally rogue and on their own, and all the other governors are like, okay, we'll see how that goes and then we'll decide about our. They don't like to do it that way here. Here, they like to have Hokkaido to Okinawa all included in the same plan. So that's why things can get slowed down a lot. Right. But that's also why you see a nemawashi time for 2 weeks, and then it gets rolled out over the whole country. It's very interesting to me. So I feel like in the next week or 2 weeks, maybe, we'll see a lot more testing. They're going to try to catch up.
Yeah.
Chris
Moore has a comment here.
What?
He says, that was great nemawashi and virus explanation.
Thank you. I am thinking about these things every day, and I always see, the minute you see Chris, when you watch Suga-san do his announcement to the press, and then when you watch the sensei, that older sensei who talks about stuff, and then you watch the news program start to use one similar keyword, that means they're doing nemawashi. And that means the whole country. And then they have interviews with people on the street. And a lot of the interviews, one person will say, well, komaru, because they're speaking for other people. But then a lot of the people will say, shikata ga nai ne, like we can't really avoid it. And that means that the whole country is coming together. So then the lockdown starts. It's very interesting to me.
That is really interesting and very unique Japan approach, isn't it?
I agree, yeah.
We've got 15 minutes left. Let's talk a little bit more specifically about your advice for people at home, working from home. So let's talk routines. Let's talk having a balance in your day and preparation. Those are the 3 key points I could think of in terms of having like a structure that works when trying to work from home. I think you're very good at routine.
I'm really a routine maniac.
Yeah.
I love routine.
Let's hear it.
Too, because you wake up early and stuff. I have learned, I unfortunately last summer got shingles, which is not fun to have at all. And shingles is basically you get it. It's like chicken pox. It's a virus in you that is in everyone, and it just comes out when you're run down. And I just got 2 run down because I was writing a book and I was waking up too early and going to sleep late. And I think over time, my lack of sleep just piled up. Yeah. Even though I was doing really fun stuff, I didn't feel like I was under any specific stress. No.
But you're always on the go. It's hard to. Maybe easier now that you're stay at home, right?
Well, kind of. But I would say that I recommend to everyone that sleep is probably the number one thing. So you must decide how much sleep your body needs. My body needs 8 hours, absolutely 8 hours, sometimes 9. Like I have to have that to function well. So if I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, today I get to do a live thing with Joy. I want to wake up. And, you just get excited, right? Like, oh, what kind of coffee am I going to have? Like I start to get excited and I want to wake up. I want to get out of bed. I will myself to stay in bed. I keep my mask on. I close my eyes and I try to, I try to pray or I try to meditate or I just try to allow myself possibly to drift back for a little bit more sleep. And I don't check my phone. I don't do anything until I have rested for 8 hours. Right. And sometimes if I wake up at 6 and I know I have to stay in bed until 8, I just feel like, okay, well, even if I can't fall back to sleep, I'll be resting with my eyes closed for 2 more hours. And oftentimes you find yourself falling back to sleep.
That's so good. Sometimes you just can't. Like for me, I've been getting really upset about reading the news first thing or I get a lot of news quickest from Twitter, but there's also a lot of negativity sometimes. So I had to stop myself from reading anything or having news first thing. First thing, I get up, I have coffee, I do stretching, I try to meditate, you just got to start with something positive and something good for you.
Well, connect, because we know that the universe is larger than us. Yeah. And when you do any kind of meditation, you're opening yourself to connect to the good things in the air and breathing and stuff. So one of my favorite authors, I think you too, is C.S. Lewis. I love C.S. Lewis. And I read something about C.S. Lewis, and he also, before he woke up in the morning, when he woke up in the morning, he described it as the wild horses. Before the wild horses of the world come and get me, I want to reconnect with myself, before the wild horses start to come in. And that really resonated with me. It's like, sometimes when you wake up in the morning, you start to remember, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, whatever. But before that, I definitely make sure I'm resting 8 hours. So if I went to sleep at 11 at night, I stay in bed till 7 for sure, right? Then when I wake up, the first thing I do is I make my bed. I have my routine. I drink a nice big thing of water, not cold water, but sort of lukewarm water. I take my vitamins. Now I take my temperature, Yeah. And then I go outside and I do stretching for about 20 minutes. Just if I can do it outside, I do it outside. If not, I do it in the house. So I definitely do that. Some push-ups, some actual little bit of training to work on your muscles. Yep. And after that, I literally spend 30 or 40 minutes of study. So I like to, like you said, I practice my Japanese. And the way I do it is I read an English part of the Bible. And then I read a Japanese part of the same part of the Bible, but I read it out loud because Japanese Bible has a lot of very good Japanese in it. But it all has furigana, the little hiragana next to it. So I can really learn kanji that way. And then I read 2 books. I read some sections of 2 books. Then I write in my journal. And then if I have study to do, like I'm taking driving lessons right now at Kamakura Jidosha Gakko.
Oh, wow.
So I have to pass my learner's permit. This is a whole new conversation. But
Yeah. Talk about that next time.
Yeah, I have to pass my learner's permit. So I'm taking my little tests and stuff. So I do that in the morning. And then I think if I can start working on my computer from around 10, like this is the work at home plan. So if I start working on my computer at 10 until 12, and then at 12 is the first time I watch the news. Then I turn off the news, don't watch any more TV, and I work all the way through until about 2. This is one of my videos, is I know that my non-productive time is 2 to 4 every day. Yeah. I know that's when I want to take a nap. So I go walking or I do something else. I clean the house between 2 and 4. And then when I come back at 4, I do my kohan sen, which is the second half of my activity. And I just work until like 9 or so at night. And I close everything down at 9. And then I do something I like after that. Unless there's some kind of emergency.
That's really good. That sounds like a really practical routine that is catered to you based on your body rhythms and what works for you that you've developed over time. That makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of these people I know who have been asked to telework, they have really strict 9 to 5 routines, and then they have only an hour for lunch. But if you work for yourself like you do, or I do, you can be a bit more flexible about what actually works for you. So that's a bit hard if you have to be at your desk from, a certain time to a certain time. That's a bit of a struggle for people when they used to have more flexibility, right?
Yes.
There's another comment from Chris. He says, using overshoot was driving me mad, but it makes sense now.
Yeah. Who knows even what that means? I wonder if that's even a word.
Well, overshoot was used in by environmental scientists for a long time, talking about climate change and how an overshoot of carbon. And then it was used for some reason about COVID and the number of beds. He had another comment, Chris, I've only been here 20 years, not long enough yet, obviously. So appreciating your insight.
If you can think of all like the words that are in your head, you know that the nemawashi has been successful. Like obashuto, kurasta, right? Everybody knows what kurasta is right now, right? And then everybody knows the PCP Kensa, right? So now everybody has it in their head. I think it's PCP, right? PCP Kensa. There's
PCR.
Some kind of
I think it's PCR.
Yeah.
No.
So everybody in their head right now has PCR Kensa. So PCR Kensa is now a big deal, which means they're trying to introduce the testing. So everybody who's all worried about, Japan doesn't have enough testing and whatever, I really think that they're on it. They're just doing it at their own pace, and they're doing their nemawashi.
Another advice I got from people when I started working for myself at home is stick to routines, which I think you've established. A daily routine, a daily schedule is really good to have balance that works for you. People have said dress up as usual. Like dress up like you're going to work. And we've seen funny scenes on Zoom calls where people are only dressed up on the top, right? And then shorts underneath
Yeah.
Do you try to do that? You try to dress up as usual?
Well, if I'm on a call with a client, yes, totally. For my own sense of well-being, like if it's a normal week where I do go out a lot during the day and visit clients directly or have meetings outside, I'm already putting my makeup on and dressing up, right?
Right.
If in that environment, if I have a day at home, a lot of times I will not put makeup on, I will not dress up. I'll just be doing what I want because it's kind of like a holiday, right? Because when you're doing telework or remote working, Saturday and Sunday doesn't really matter anymore. It's like all the same.
Yeah.
So you have to think of, if I have a Wednesday with no going out, that's my Saturday for this week. So sometimes, no, I don't dress up. But now when we're working pretty much 100% from home, now I've added to my routine that I do my makeup every morning just to make me feel like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready in case somebody calls me suddenly, So I think that's good. Yes.
I've got a picture up of a picture I took of you on your way to work with your case and all dressed up with your big bag. So you always have like a carryable office, a portable office whenever I've seen you at work. So now
Yeah.
you just have it at home. It must be a lot easier. But the face-to-face, losing the face-to-face must be really hard because you're a public speaker, you're on television. That must be a real hard adjustment for you. No? You doing okay?
Yeah, well, the TV one is not really face to face because everybody's looking at you through the lens. So that's continuing. The speeches were kind of like an add-on to my business anyway. And I did it for, what have I done it for like 8 years? And I probably did over 60 speeches a year up until now.
Crazy.
So that's a lot of activity to go to all the places because I have been all over the place. These are, speeches about my books and things like that.
Have you had any places contact you to do an online speech? Because that's the next best step, right?
Yeah, so I just did for Meiji University. I do 2 classes for them every year, and I've done it for about 5 years, all about like encouraging the students to go overseas and really think about things in a global mindset. And this time, instead of having the class on campus, they're doing an online kind of thing. So the way that they decided to do it, it's a 100-minute course. So what I did is I did 10-minute segments, video. And then I made my normal, documents for that. And so I sent that to them. And so they're going to send out 10-minute segments of my speech to all the students that would have been taking that class.
Nice.
So, all these different places are trying their new style of doing stuff.
Yeah.
One of the really good things, and this is total advice for anybody doing business, something that I'm really happy that we did is we did not have a specific industry that we depended on. Our basic theme is connecting the international user with you. So doing sales, doing marketing, doing promotion to an international user with your content. So whether they're in Japan, whether they're outside of Japan, whether they're online, whether they're at your restaurant, it's the same, right? So one of our big clients is Sony Bank. Mm-hmm. And it turned out that this time Sony Bank has offered this new English online banking service, and it got launched on March 30th. And as you said earlier, there are so many more people online that Sony Bank English banking service is going through the roof. It's so successful. So I'm so happy with that. They were thinking they're going to get 20 downloads a day because it's all application. Like on your smartphone, you can download it.
I saw people talking about it on Twitter when it went live, and people really excited about it.
Yeah, there's no extra charge for international currency. So the other day I bought dollars online with my Sony Bank account for the exact same amount that was on the NHK. So 107, no added cost, nothing. Anyway, it's a really good service. So they were expecting, 20 downloads a day, and they got over 100 for like each day.
Wow.
So it overloaded the system. So what I'm trying to say is that when you do your business, everybody, please diversify.
Yeah.
Please have certain clients that are online, have certain clients that are face-to-face. And then we, through this big challenge, yes, we did lose 2 clients, but then we also had other clients that were adaptable to this big change. So I'm really happy that we did that, and I'm going to try to stay on that. Yeah, so that's important when you're doing business. Have it diversified.
That's awesome. And that's something that I need to take on board and try to do more. And I was doing a lot of face-to-face stuff and guide training in terms of sustainable tourism. And that's all fallen away. But like you said, there's no reason I can't do short videos of the class and make an online course. That's definitely something I should do.
Yeah.
And find other ways to make a living.
Quick example, like I'm pretty sure that this is open, so I can say it.
Yeah.
But one of our clients is Sado Island in Niigata.
That's right.
And they have this yearly big, humongous event called Earth Celebration.
I heard they're going to be online, right?
Oh, so you saw that? Yes.
Yeah.
They're going to be online, and normally, a person like me would think, like a lot of other live activities, you charge for people to watch it, and that's how you get your income, right? And you can scale it, like everybody around the world can watch it, right?
It's awesome branding, though, to do it for free, like they're doing for free this year, right?
Yeah, they're going to do it for free with an option to contribute.
Oh, nice.
So who are watching it are going to be able to like Patreon or something like that and contribute to it as they watch it. So just imagine, up until now, they've had 1,000 people come to the island to watch it directly, whereas now it could be millions of people that watch it.
And anybody who's watching this, they have the most amazing taiko drummers and traditional Japanese performers. So opening it up, making it online is creating a huge possibility for a much, much wider audience. I hope they'll hire some really good photographers and videographers like Chris, who's been commenting, and, really document it.
Chris, the photographer?
Chris, the videographer, Chris Moore.
I know you, Chris. Hi, Chris.
He was on the live stream last week, so I was able to catch up with him.
I love Chris.
He could send his drone over and then still do social distancing.
Well, the thing that I love is that the name of the event is Earth Celebration.
Yeah.
And so when we were talking with the organizers, I was saying, all over the world, turtles are coming back to the beaches. The air is getting cleaner. Yeah. Like this great realization that we're having about Mother Earth and how important she is. What a perfect name for the event. And, trying to bring people together through drumming, because drumming, what they believe is that drumming is like the blood pulsing through the veins of your mother when you were in your mother's womb. That's why drums are so comforting and so global. And so, if we could bring the world together with this Earth Celebration event, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about it.
That's awesome. And I hope a lot of other big events will be online as well for free.
Yeah.
And then maybe, like you said, online for free, but you have donations, or maybe you have added value experiences, like you would pay a little bit extra to see more high quality photos, or to have interviews with some of the drummers, or, like there are certain added value things that you could add, and then they could get more revenue. I've got loads of ideas.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hiroshima as well. We've got our big peace ceremony. This year is the 75th anniversary of the bombing, so it should be a really big event. But I don't know if even in summer, if events are going to go ahead because of social distancing and concern about corona. It's kind of like you have to just listen to the news and make adjustments. Like you said, step by step, we have to see if it's going to work. But going online for events makes so much sense. I'm glad Sato's doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. One last thing, we talked about health, about daily routines. One other thing about sustainability is how can you reduce your impact while you're working from home. So turning off lights and heating units if you're not using them, those are very practical and typical. Turning off your computer. Do you turn off your computer at night?
I just turned off my light. But I look so pale in this video. No. Everybody's okay.
Well, you need it. It's fine. Other things you can do. You can eat less meat, which if you're not being so active, eating less meat's not a bad thing. And there's a big strain on the meat industry, fish industry right now anyway, because people are working less.
I recommend, I think that you had also seen it, the Game Changers video. Everybody's watching Netflix right now. Watch Game Changers and you will immediately cut meat out of your diet. Anyone. I'm telling you, that was the thing that changed me. I haven't eaten meat in, I don't know, like over a year.
Really?
I mean, yeah, total plant-based, total. It's just, when you watch that, it's the scientific approach and it's talking about, the strongest man in the world as a plant-based power lifter, and everybody's like, how can you be as strong as an ox and you only eat, lettuce, right? He says, well, when's the last time you saw an ox eating meat, right?
It's so true. And it's amazing in that film, the documentary, how their endurance level actually improved, right? Went up.
Yes. So I think that a lot of people, unfortunately, were very selfish, and we respond better to, instead of let's save the world by doing this, it's like you yourself will be so much more fit and healthy and happy. And especially with this COVID-19, it just came out that the people most affected, unfortunately, are obese and, underlying symptoms, right? And obesity will cause all this kind of bad stuff. So I think that people are going to rethink processed foods and different kinds of meats and things like that. So yeah, this is just, as I've heard elsewhere, the great realization.
Yeah.
What are we going to realize during this? How are we going to change?
Chris says, what is the name of the film again? It's called Game Changers. All one word. You can search YouTube. It's available on Netflix for free. And I believe it's on YouTube as well.
It's totally, well, first of all, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger and there were some sports people in it. I had no idea what it was about. I thought they were going to talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger changing I thought it was going to be like a Michael Jordan kind of documentary, about sports figures. Then I started watching it and it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger changing to a plant-based diet and how that has changed his life. And all of these top athletes, on a plant-based diet and talking about the science of it all. And for all the men out there talking about how more, what's it called? Like, how do you say?
More virile, right? Isn't it?
Yeah,
dude.
Is
that the word?
Wow. It's like
that part of the movie is crazy, right? With young athletes and doing something overnight. I'll let you guys watch it. And the scientific proof,
and
right?
And like 1 week of eating meat like tortilla, and then 1 week of eating vegetable tortilla, and they show the actual blood of the athlete.
Yeah.
And then you see the goop floating in the upper part of the blood. And I mean, it's like, it's not, this is better for, it's not like an idealist kind of show. It like actually proves the point. Yeah. So I totally think that everybody should watch that.
Yeah. And they had some people after the movie came out try to debunk some of the science, but the guy who was the main star, the like self-defense guru, he's gone on talk shows and defended all the claims, and I think they've done it really well.
The results speak for themselves.
Yeah,
all the athletes doing the best records they've ever done in their life on a plant-based diet, that was enough for me. That's
awesome. Last question about working from home. We're just over an hour now. To cutting out distraction. Distraction being the worst thing that can happen while you're trying to focus working from home. You have any tips for cutting out distraction in your life to get work done? Staying on track?
That's a really good question. I think my journaling helps me with that. So writing in my journal every day definitely helps. And then not to be distracted, I usually decide the two main things that I want to achieve that day. So, there's a job. There's probably two things about my job. Like I definitely want to post about this because that will connect to this and that and this and lead to new job possibility. So within your daily, in order to drive the stone forward, right? Because you are in charge. That's one of my videos, is that you have the handle on the car and you're driving it. You don't want to be in a situation where somebody else is always telling you what to do and you're responding only. You want to be driving it, right? So in order to drive it forward, you need to decide every day, maybe 2 or 3 things you will definitely finish today. Like finish and do it. And then once you finish those 3 things at night, you feel like, okay, I was successful. I did the 3 things that I wanted to do.
Right.
Whether it's making a handmade mask for your kid for going to school tomorrow is perfectly fine.
Yep.
There's like 3 goals for the day. And as long as you're doing those 3, you don't feel like you were so distracted.
Right. Having small goals, even if it's something like I got to mail this letter or I have to respond to that email, even small things can make you feel better mentally that you're making some kind of progress, right?
Yeah, that you're driving it.
Yeah.
It's not you being driven.
Yeah. One last comment from Twitch. Pete Zafine says, I love your glasses. Thank you. I chose my orange ones today. I've been wearing these colorful glasses on all the live streams. So, yeah, today was orange because I got my big sis with me. Thanks for commenting. So I think that's it. We've done almost an hour 10. Thank you so much, Ruth. That was awesome discussion.
All right. It was so nice talking to you, and goodbye to everyone.
Yeah. Any final words of support to anybody working from home?
Well, I think that this is how it's going to be going forward. So this is a brand new world. We all just have to put our heads together and figure out how to make it work. WERK, work it. That's all I have to say.
And if you understand Japanese, definitely check out Ruth's channel. You're going to get English subtitles anytime soon, or just keep it in Japanese?
It's pretty much to the Japanese audience, but anybody who can pick up a little bit of Japanese, it applies to working in Japan. Yeah. So anybody would definitely watch it.
And anybody learning Japanese, definitely check out NHK World channel. What's the name of the show?
It's called Easy Japanese for Work.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ruth. Have a good day.
Hey, Joy. Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.